You know, there's a new recovery group emerging. You know, our society has many self-help groups and recovery groups. Some say it's because we have been displaced as a extended family nation, and we become more of a nuclear family nation, and even that has been reduced in size to single mothers, single people's homes, and so we have support groups in a way to try to compensate for that, and that's one reason why they're so popular and in need. And this particular support group is a recovery process from being under the power of transnational capitalist class corporations. Absurd, isn't it? Recovery group for that. But anyway, I have their first two principles as that group's evolving, as you can tell who might be starting that group. We have come to the awareness that we are oppressed, dislodged, and displaced from our true selves. The structure of our society facilitates a false self so that we can participate in this society. This morning, and the false self is an interesting concept because you can be a false self and know you're being a false self and let that go and come back and be your true self, or you can actually merge into your false self and that's all you know about yourself. For example, we stopped to get gas this morning, and I went into the place, and usually when I go into this particular gas station, Fox News is blaring, right? So I avoid it as much as possible. And but this morning it was off. So I said to the person behind the counter, I said, "Thank God that that's off." And she smiled and she said, "Yeah, he's gone away for a week." And so I thought, oh, maybe you could sue for political harassment or form a union, you know. But then I was reminded of that story from the book that we had gone through and had some sermons on, if you'll remember, called The Dark Mother, tracing the displacement of indigenous peoples by patriarchy and imperialist nations, and that what would happen. And there's a story about this town in France that when the church leaders would come through, the people would parade through with big crosses and everything that pleased the church leaders, and naturally so, because the consequences were quite severe if you did not do that. But as soon as they were left and over the hill, the people would come out and they would bring the statue of Madonna, which was a dark statue of Madonna connecting back to the Dark Mother, and they would have their party and festival that was truly who they were. So they became a false self so they wouldn't be persecuted. But when the persecution and the oppression was gone, they'd go back to who they truly are. The danger is when the false self becomes the only sense of self. And generally, the more severe the persecution is, the more severe the oppression is, the more intense the false self is, and you learn to let go of your true self. My hunch is in this room, we don't have a lot of people who conform. And we have a lot of people that challenge. If I asked you to be a particular way on a Sunday morning, you would not come back, or you would choose to be the other way just on purpose to show me that you wouldn't have to be that particular way. I mean, I do it. We do it. It's a reaction formation. You're not going to tell me what to do and what to believe. So, as we begin this idea, know your place, really the only way to get at that, and I thought of many ways of beginning to present this kind of idea, but I think the first realization is to know we have been displaced. I was going to use the word, and obviously since I'm going to say it, I'm going to use it, and Helen and I had some discussion about it. We're deranged. She went, that might be a bit strong. You might not want to use that word deranged. But then after thinking about it, she said the human being in its 100,000-year history has a sense of territory, has a sense of place, has a sense of tribe, has a sense of belonging. And in that, sense of territory, and we've talked some about this before. You might walk around your neighborhood, and in a sense, you're claiming your territory. That's your neighborhood, even if it's not your yard and you don't own it, or you're not borrowing it from the bank. However you want to understand that. If something happens, 100 yards from your house that's kind of out of place, you have a feeling about it, because that's your territory. But yet, at the same time, like at our house, the lot next door to us is, I thought how to say this. It's undeveloped. It's more in its natural state, but I want to say it's undeveloped. Like, that's the problem. It's not developed. Even that language is a problem. But it's all treed. And they had Brazilian peppers, which are amazing things, Brazilian peppers. I was out there this morning, and all the pollen, just heard it. It was just good or bad. It was just amazing. Somebody could come along tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, and how they usually do that is they put 2 little marks on the street and just wipe out everything on that lot. My psyche and my being of what it means to be human that's territory. That's part of me. I'm just not this flesh thing. I have a spirit that moves out. That's territory, and it's part of who I am. And when that just gets cleared, I am deranged. My range is gone. I have no power, no say where my range is. It's a problem. I am displaced. My sense of being, my sense of belonging disappears. And there's this saying in the book we've gone through before, stories about Buddha, and talking about sacred scriptures and how much power scriptures have in our culture. And it played in our history, and good and bad. It's called the Sacred Scriptures taught that happiness was the ability to accept one's position. Accept your position. In a minute, I'll tell you what society that comes from. So we're displaced, and when we look at that, we try to understand it. Christopher Lasher, a social historian, wrote the book, The Culture of Narcissism. That we live in a culture of narcissism, and we're addicted to the feeling of acquisition. We're not addicted to actually the object. We're addicted to the process of acquiring the object. So we acquire the object and we let it go, and we're off to acquire another object. Ann Wilson writes the book, The Addictive Society, that our society is just an addictive process, and we can never be at rest, and we can never feel at home. And it talks about anxiety and depression being normalized in our culture. Rather than changing the culture so that we can let the anxiety and depression go, we create a pharmaceutical industry so that we don't have to change our culture because it benefits a few. So we create a pharmaceutical industry that numbs us out so we don't have to deal with the issues that cause us anxiety and depression because we're powerless to do so anyway. Something like that. In the codependent field, 96% of the people are codependent. Codependent basically means you will sacrifice yourself to the other, not taking care of yourself. Are we a nation of healthy, vibrant, alive people? Or are we a nation that's fearful? Are we a nation that says, as liberal, moderate people say, from 1945, after World War II and the Roosevelt administration to the 1970s, we had a strong, vibrant middle class and was really good. We had pensions. We were taking care of the elderly. We were taking care of people that were poor, and we developed ladders for people that were poor through the educational process that they could actually move through education to the better of their life, and they had equal opportunity. And for those 30 or 40 years, it was really something. But now that which we call was really something is not just being threatened. It has largely been dismantled, and we live in fear that the rest will go soon. Codependent. Chellis Glendenning, a book we just read in the book group that we have. Hi, my name is Chellis, and I'm in recovery from Western civilization. Her take on our culture is that we suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome as a culture because we are perpetually bombarded by messages that are not life-giving. We are just perpetually bombarded by information. Our lots next to us are perpetually cleared. Our commons are perpetually cleared and polluted and have toxics on them, and we live with that every day. Do we know our place? Have you been put in your place? is your place to challenge that? Is your place to speak up against that? What is our place? And my favorite, Christopher Bolus, who coined the term the normatic personality, is an outcome of all these difficulties we struggle with. And the normatic personality is the personality that's excessively normal. There's a numbing of subjectivity in the person in favor of a self that is conceived as a material object among other man-made products in the objective world. Now, what does that mean? That a human being, our subjectivity is our thinking, our meaning-making, our reflecting, our capacity to read and say, what is it that I just read? And how does what I just read make sense with what's going on over here? That happens in our subjectivity. And he's saying this normatic personality structure, that's becoming erased. And the person is becoming an object and a material object like other material objects in this world. When you look, I saw something the other day on television. What's Spitzer's first name? The guy from Elliot Spitzer. I don't know. He's got a new program out. And he was talking to a person that represented a particular political movement in our country. And the person that represented this particular political movement used the languages like liberty, freedom, small government, and those things. But then Spitzer said, wait a minute, I'm a capitalist too, and we can't have this because if these things are too big to fail and they form a monopoly, you really can't have capitalism, and really gave some thought and some depth to the conversation. The other person repeated, if you're having a conversation with somebody and you say something and they say something back to you, you say something back to them and they say something back to you, and it's engaging, and you can tell that the conversation's gaining some depth and there's new information coming. And as you're talking to the person, they're accessing different parts of their history and different parts of their learning and different parts of their personal experience. And as you engage them, you're doing the same, and it really has meaning and you really feel good about the conversation, and it's very genuine and very real. And so this person offers these cliches, and Spitzer says, wait a minute, no, because of this, this, and this. And it comes back and the person offers the exact same cliches. And Spitzer comes back and says, well, what about this, this? I mean, did 3 or 4 different perspectives drilling in on this subject. And every time the person came back with the exact same cliches.